Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Dead Man's Return. The rain hammered against the windows of the small two-story house on Maple Street as Sean Anthony unpacked the last box in what used to be his home office. 3 years. 3 years since the Department of Defense had declared Colonel Sean Anthony killed in action during a classified operation in the Kandahar province. 3 years since his wife Tamara had collected his death benefits and moved on with her life. 3 years since he'd been operating in the deepest shadows of military intelligence, a ghost hunting ghosts. Now he was back, and the woman who'd mourned him looked at him like he was a stranger. Sean was 42, his dark hair showing premature silver at the temples, souvenirs from his years running black ops missions across 3 continents. His frame was lean and hard, muscles coiled tight beneath his civilian clothes. The Distinguished Service Cross sat in a box somewhere, along with 2 Purple Hearts and commendations he'd never talk about. He'd commanded Delta Force teams, run operations that never made the papers, and survived situations that would have broken lesser men. But coming home to Tamara's cold indifference was somehow worse than enemy fire. "You're still unpacking?" Tamara appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She'd always been beautiful, sharp features, calculating green eyes that had once looked at him with something resembling love. Now they held only impatience. "It's been 2 weeks, Sean. Government kept me in debriefing for 8 months after extraction," he said evenly, sliding a photo frame onto the shelf. Their wedding photo from 9 years ago. Different lifetime, different people. Then medical evaluations, physical therapy, psych evals. "You know how it goes." "Do I?" Her laugh was bitter. "You've been gone 3 years. I thought you were dead. I buried an empty coffin, Sean. I grieved. I moved on." There it was. Moved on. He'd noticed the way she flinched when he touched her. The separate bedrooms she'd insisted on. "You need space to readjust." The phone call she took in private. The new expensive car in the driveway she'd explained away as treating myself. "I called you as soon as they allowed me to make contact," Sean said quietly. "The mission was classified. Deep cover. I couldn't." "I know this speech." She waved him off. "I've heard it 5 times now. Look, I have to run out. Meeting with Sheila about the charity event." Sheila Fraser. Tamara's best friend since college. He'd never liked her. Too interested in money, too quick to judge. But Tamara had always defended her. "What charity event?" "The Veterans Relief Foundation Gala. I'm on the planning committee." A slight edge in her voice. "Some of us didn't stop living just because you were gone." She left before he could respond, heels clicking down the hallway. The front door slammed. Sean stood in the silence, his instincts screaming. The same instincts that had kept him alive through dozens of operations. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He walked to the window and watched Tamara's Mercedes pull out of the driveway. Then he moved to the desk and pulled out the laptop he'd picked up from a military surplus dealer. Untraceable, encrypted, off any network the government monitored. Old habits. He'd been watching her for the past week. Not because he wanted to, but because his training wouldn't let him ignore the signs. The whispered phone calls. The cash withdrawals. The way she tensed whenever he entered a room. The laptop contained software he wasn't supposed to have anymore. Programs that could crack passwords, track phones, access security cameras. He'd already cloned her phone 2 days ago when she left it charging in the kitchen. What he found made his blood run cold. Text messages to a contact saved as B. Dozens of them. B. When is he leaving again? Tamara. He doesn't leave. He's always here. I can't breathe. B. We need to talk about the plan. Tonight? Tamara. Yes. The usual place. 9 p.m. The messages went back weeks. Before he'd even finished his debriefings. Before he'd come home. Sean leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. He'd faced enemy combatants, survived torture, led men through hell. But this was different. This was betrayal from someone he'd trusted with his life. He kept reading. More messages. More meetings. And then, from last night, B. $2 million in life insurance. Split it 50/50ths. No one will question it after everything you've been through. Tamara. I can't keep doing this. Living with him. Pretending. B. You won't have to much longer. I promise. Sean closed the laptop, his mind shifting into operational mode. Emotion had no place here, not yet. First, gather intelligence. Identify the enemy. Assess the threat. Plan the response. He needed to know who B was. He needed to know what they were planning. And he needed to know how deep this went. Because if there was one thing Sean Anthony knew how to do, it was hunting down enemies. And he'd just identified 2 new targets. Chapter 2. The Conspiracy. Brett Bowers considered himself a smart man. At 38, he'd built a modestly successful real estate business in suburban Connecticut, drove a leased BMW, and had a rotation of 3 different bars where people knew his name. He had a friendly face, the kind women trusted, sandy hair, easy smile, just enough charm to be dangerous. He also had expensive tastes that outpaced his income, a gambling problem he hid well, and a total lack of conscience. Tamara Anthony had walked into his open house 18 months ago, and Brett had seen opportunity. A military widow, vulnerable and lonely, with a massive life insurance payout sitting in her bank account. $2 million that she'd barely touched, like she was waiting for permission to enjoy it. Brett had given her that permission, along with attention, romance, and promises of a life free from the shadow of her dead husband. Except Sean Anthony wasn't dead anymore. "This is a disaster," Brett muttered, pacing across Tamara's hotel room. They'd been meeting here for months, the Riverside Inn, paying cash, using fake names. "When you called me saying he was alive, I thought you were having a breakdown. I wish I was." Tamara sat on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands. "He just showed up at the door like nothing happened. The Army declared him dead, Brett. We had a funeral. I collected the insurance. And now he's back, sleeping down the hall, acting like he belongs here. You need to return the money." "I can't." Her voice cracked. "I spent $40,000 on the car. Another $30,000 on renovations. I gave $50,000 to Sheila for the charity. Our charity, Brett. The one we set up to funnel." "Don't." He held up a hand. "Don't talk about that here." The Veterans Relief Foundation. It had been Sheila's idea, actually. A fake charity to launder Brett's gambling debts and Tamara's suspicious expenses. They'd even hosted a few small events, enough to look legitimate. The real money went into offshore accounts, carefully hidden behind layers of shell corporations. It was working perfectly until Sean Anthony came back from the dead. "What if he finds out?" Tamara asked, her green eyes wide with fear. "About us? About the money? About everything?" Brett stopped pacing. "He won't. He was in Special Forces, Brett. He's trained to. He's trained to fight terrorists, not investigate insurance fraud." Brett sat beside her, taking her hand. "Look, he's been through hell. He's adjusting. He's not thinking clearly. We just need to be careful until he deploys again." "He's not deploying. He's retired. Medical discharge. He's here permanently." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Brett's mind raced. $2 million. Half of it was supposed to be his. They'd planned it all out. Wait a respectable time after the funeral, get married quietly, combine finances, live comfortably. He'd already spent money he didn't have based on those expectations. And now this dead man was ruining everything. "There has to be a way," Brett said slowly, "to make him go away again." Tamara pulled her hand back. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we have options." He stood, the wheels turning. "Think about it. He's traumatized, suffering from PTSD, probably. Violent nightmares, maybe? Paranoid behavior. Brett, I'm not saying we do anything. I'm saying we document things. Build a case that he's dangerous. Unstable. Then, if something were to happen, if there was an incident, nobody would be surprised." Tamara stared at him. "You want to kill him?" "I want us to have the life we planned," Brett corrected. "The life we deserve. He's been gone 3 years, Tamara. You don't owe him anything. You've moved on. You have a right to be happy." He could see her wavering. Tamara had always been easy to manipulate. Beautiful, insecure, desperate for someone to take control. Brett had recognized it the moment they met. "Ow," she whispered. Brett smiled. "Let me make some calls. I know people, guys from my Army days." He'd done 2 years in the National Guard before getting kicked out for disciplinary issues, but he kept in touch with a few useful contacts. Meanwhile, You start documenting erratic behavior. Write it down. Tell your friends you're scared. Build the narrative. And then Colonel Sean Anthony has a tragic accident. Maybe he's cleaning a weapon and it goes off. Maybe his PTSD gets the better of him. Either way, you're a widow again. Legitimately this time. Tamara was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded, almost imperceptibly. Okay, she breathed. Okay. Brett kissed her forehead, hiding his smile. It would work. It had to work. He owed serious people serious money, and $2 million would solve every problem he had. He just needed to make sure one decorated war hero didn't get in the way. Chapter 3. Surveillance. Sean watched them through the scope of his surveillance binoculars from across the street. The Riverside Inn, room 237. Tamara had said she was meeting Sheila. Instead, she'd driven straight here to meet a man Sean had identified within 6 hours of starting his investigation. Brett Bowers, age 38, dishonorable discharge from the National Guard, failed businesses, mounting debts, and a charming smile that probably worked on desperate women. Sean had accessed his financial records, easy enough with the right access codes, and found a man drowning in gambling debt and bad investments. Through the scope, he watched them talk. Body language spoke volumes. Brett's hand on Tamara's shoulder, possessive and controlling. Tamara's posture, leaning toward him, seeking comfort. The way they moved together suggested intimacy, months of it, maybe longer. Sean lowered the binoculars, his expression neutral. In the field, emotional detachment was survival. You analyzed the enemy's behavior without judgment, identified patterns, exploited weaknesses. Personal feelings got you killed. He couldn't afford to feel anything right now. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Sean Anthony? A familiar voice, rough with age but still commanding. General McNeil. Sean felt genuine surprise. Tristan McNeil had commanded JSOC operations, the man who'd sent Sean on his final classified mission. Didn't expect to hear from you, sir. I heard you were stateside. Thought I'd check in. A pause. How's civilian life treating you? Differently than expected. McNeil chuckled darkly. They always do. Listen, I'm in Hartford next week. Boring Defense Department meetings. Buy you a drink. Appreciated, sir. And Sean, if you need anything at all, you call me. You earn that much. Yes, sir. The call ended. Sean pocketed the phone, a plan beginning to form. He wasn't just dealing with an unfaithful wife and her criminal boyfriend. He was dealing with people actively plotting against him. The text messages made that clear enough. No one will question it after everything you've been through. They were planning to kill him, make it look like suicide or an accident, probably claim PTSD. It was a smart play, actually. Everyone would believe a traumatized veteran couldn't adjust to civilian life. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. Sean returned to his house. He couldn't think of it as home anymore, and went to the basement. He'd set up a workshop down here, telling Tamara he needed space to work on projects. She'd seemed relieved to have him occupied. The real workspace was behind the false wall he'd installed in 2 hours while she was out. Inside, he'd created an operations center. Monitors showing feeds from cameras he'd planted throughout the house. Audio equipment. Weapons stored in a hidden safe. Everything he needed. He reviewed the footage from the day. Tamara, making calls, always checking over her shoulder. Her conversation with Sheila, where they discussed the Sean situation and how Brett has a plan. Sheila Frazier was involved too. Of course she was. She'd probably helped connect Brett and Tamara in the first place. Sean pulled up the financial records he'd compiled on all three of them. That's when he found it, the Veterans Relief Foundation, a charity Tamara and Sheila ran, supposedly helping veterans transition to civilian life. Except the money trail told a different story. Donations came in, small amounts, nothing suspicious. But the expenditures were creative fiction. Fake vendor payments. Inflated costs for events. Money disappearing into shell corporations that ultimately led to offshore accounts. They weren't just planning to kill him. They'd been stealing from veterans for over a year. Something cold settled in Sean's chest. He'd spent 3 years protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Fighting enemies who threatened innocent lives. And while he was gone, his own wife had been exploiting the very community he'd served. The anger came then, controlled and focused. Not the hot rage of betrayal, but the cold calculation of a man who knew exactly how to hurt his enemies. He spent the next 3 hours planning. Not just survival. Anyone could survive. This required precision, multiple objectives, complete dismantling of everyone involved. By midnight, he had a strategy. It would take 2 weeks to execute properly. 2 weeks to gather everything he needed. 2 weeks to let them think they were winning. Then he'd show them what happens when you target a Delta Force operator. Sean heard footsteps upstairs. Tamara coming home. He quickly shut down the monitors, closed the hidden door, and walked to the basement stairs. She stood in the kitchen, startled to see him. "Couldn't sleep," he said, his voice neutral. "How was Sheila?" "Oh, good. We're making progress on the gala." She didn't quite meet his eyes. "I'm exhausted, though. Heading to bed." "Tamara." He stopped her with a word. "I know the transition has been hard. For both of us. I want you to know, I'm grateful you waited, that you're giving us a chance." Her face flickered, guilt, maybe, or calculation. "Of course. You're my husband." She went upstairs. Sean remained in the darkened kitchen, listening to her footsteps fade. The trap was set. Now he just needed to wait for them to step into it. Chapter 4. The Hunter Hunts. Brett Bowers met with Ricky Huber in a strip mall parking lot at 2 a.m., because that's where people met when discussing murder. Ricky was a contact from Brett's National Guard days, the kind of guy who'd been dishonorably discharged for reasons that weren't discussed in polite company. Now he did freelance security work for people with money and problems. "So you want this colonel dead," Ricky said, lighting a cigarette in the front seat of his truck. He was built like a linebacker gone to seed, with dead eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. "I want options," Brett corrected. "Something that looks natural. Natural costs extra. Accidents take planning." Ricky blew smoke toward the cracked window. "This guy, Anthony, he's legit special forces?" "Was. He's retired. Medical discharge. Delta Force don't retire, man. They just go dormant." Ricky shook his head. "You're asking me to hit a trained operator in his own home. That's suicide rates. 20,000 up front. 30 when it's done." That got Ricky's attention. "You got that kind of cash?" Brett didn't, but he would. He'd already taken out loans against properties he barely owned, promising himself it would all be worth it. "I've got it." "When?" "Soon. We need to move fast." Brett leaned closer. "The wife will help from inside. She'll make sure the alarm is off. Doors unlocked. She'll document erratic behavior. PTSD episodes, violent outbursts. Build the narrative. And then I walk in, pop him while he's sleeping, make it look like suicide. Something like that. Or a cleaning accident. He's got weapons in the house. Lots of them, apparently." Ricky considered this. "I'll need surveillance first. Learn his patterns. Entry and exit points. 3 days minimum. You've got 2. Then the price is 60. Non-negotiable." Brett gritted his teeth but nodded. It didn't matter. Once Sean was dead and the insurance money was secured, these debts would disappear. What Brett didn't know was that Sean had been following him since he left the Riverside Inn. What Brett couldn't see was the small tracking device attached to his car's undercarriage, or the directional microphone aimed at his truck from 300 yards away, or the night vision scope watching every movement. Sean recorded the entire conversation from his position in the tree line. He photographed Ricky Huber's license plate, then spent 20 minutes in his own vehicle running the identification through military databases he technically no longer had access to. Ricky Huber, dishonorable discharge for selling stolen military equipment. Suspected in 2 unsolved homicides. Currently under investigation by the ATF for illegal weapons trafficking. Perfect. Sean drove home, his mind cataloging every detail. He now had 3 primary targets, Tamara, Brett, and Ricky, plus 1 secondary target, Sheila Frazier. The conspiracy was larger than he'd thought. More people were involved in the charity fraud, which meant more evidence to collect. He arrived home at 3:30 a.m. to find Tamara still awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine. "Working late?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive." He hung his keys by the door. "You?" "Same. This insomnia is killing me." She studied him over the rim of her glass. "Sean, I need to talk to you about something. Here it comes, he thought. The setup. I'm worried about you, she continued. You seem disconnected, angry sometimes. I know you're dealing with a lot, and I want to support you, but I also need to feel safe in my own home. Safe? He kept his voice level. Have I done something to make you feel unsafe? No, not exactly. But last night, you were cleaning your rifle at midnight, and you've been disappearing at odd hours. And yesterday, I heard you shouting in the basement. I wasn't shouting. I was on the phone. It sounded violent. Her eyes were wide, performing concern. Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist. Someone who understands what you've been through. You think I have PTSD. I think you've experienced trauma and need help processing it. She reached for his hand. He let her take it, even though her touch made his skin crawl. I'm on your side, Sean, but you have to meet me halfway. The manipulation was elegant. She was building the record, exactly as Brett had told her to, documenting concerning behavior, creating a paper trail that would later justify whatever they had planned. You're right, Sean said, letting defeat color his voice. I'll make an appointment with the VA, maybe get on some medication. Relief flooded her features. Thank you. I just want us to be okay. So do I. He squeezed her hand, looking into her eyes. You're all I have, Tamara. Coming home to you is what kept me alive over there. Guilt flickered across her face, genuine emotion breaking through the performance. For just a moment, he saw the woman he'd married. Then it was gone, replaced by the stranger who was plotting his murder. Get some sleep, she said, withdrawing her hand. Things will look better in the morning. Sean went to his room and closed the door. Then he retrieved his laptop and began phase 2 of his operation. He'd recorded Tamara's statement. He had Brett's conversation with Ricky Huber on audio. He had financial records showing the charity fraud. Now, he needed to connect all the pieces in a way that would destroy them completely. He started with Ricky Huber. One anonymous call to the ATF about illegal weapons in storage unit 247 would trigger investigation. But Sean wanted more than that. He wanted Ricky to lead the feds directly to Brett. Next, he drafted documents that would quietly expose the Veterans Relief Foundation's fraud, but not to the police. Not yet. Instead, he sent carefully worded inquiries to the IRS and several veteran advocacy groups, asking innocent questions about the foundation's finances. It would take weeks for the investigations to ramp up, but when they did, every transaction would be scrutinized. Finally, he composed a message to General McNeil, outlining the situation in careful terms. He didn't ask for help, not yet, but he wanted someone outside the conspiracy to know what was happening, just in case. By dawn, Sean had positioned all his pieces. Now, he just needed to wait for his enemies to make their move. Chapter 5, The Swatting. It happened on a Tuesday night, exactly 8 days after Sean had recorded Brett's conversation with Ricky Huber. Sean was in his basement operations center, reviewing surveillance footage, when he heard Tamara on the phone upstairs. Her voice carried through the vents, urgent, panicked, performing fear. Please, you have to help me. My husband, he's having an episode. He's got weapons. He's saying things that don't make sense. He's going to hurt someone. Maybe himself. I don't know what to do. Sean's blood went cold. Not with fear, with recognition. She was swatting him. He accessed the police scanner on his computer, and sure enough, within 2 minutes a call went out. All units, we have a report of an armed and dangerous individual at 2847 Maple Street. Subject is trained military, possibly suffering mental health crisis. Approach with extreme caution. Then the kicker, from the police chief's direct line, Lloyd Carlson's voice. Authorization for SWAT deployment. Suspect is barricaded and has expressed suicidal ideation with intention to harm first responders. Rules of engagement. Use of deadly force authorized if threatened. Shoot on sight. Tamara had just called in a kill order on her own husband. Sean moved fast. He had maybe 10 minutes before the SWAT team arrived. He climbed the stairs calmly, finding Tamara in the living room. Her phone clutched to her chest, real tears streaming down her face. Sean, please, she said, performing for the recording. Just put the gun down. We can get you help. I don't have a gun, Tamara. You're scaring me. I know exactly what you're doing. He spoke quietly, without anger. You call the police. Told them I'm armed and dangerous. Told them to shoot me. Very clever. Her mask slipped. For just a second, he saw the calculation in her eyes. You're paranoid, she said, but her voice wavered. You need help. I need you to sit down and be quiet. Because in about 7 minutes, a SWAT team is going to kick in that door. And if you've done this right, they're going to be looking for a reason to shoot me. Sirens in the distance, growing closer. Sean walked to his gun safe, opened it, and removed his hunting rifle, the one he'd been cleaning that night Tamara mentioned. He sat down in his recliner, in the dark, and began methodically field stripping and cleaning the weapon. Tamara watched him, horror dawning on her face. What are you doing? Waiting. Sean, they're going to kill you. Maybe. Or maybe they're going to recognize me. The sirens were right outside now. Squealing tires. Shouted commands. The mechanical crunch of the battering ram hitting the front door. Police. Search warrant. Show your hands. The door burst inward. 6 SWAT officers poured into the house, weapons up, lasers painting the darkness. They found Sean sitting in his recliner, cleaning his rifle, completely calm. Drop the weapon. Drop it now. Sean didn't move. He looked up at the officer in front, Captain Hector Nichols, according to his name tape. Their eyes met in the dim light. Recognition dawned on Nichols's face like sunrise. Colonel. Nichols lowered his weapon. Colonel Anthony? Captain Nichols. Sean's voice was steady. Been a while. Nichols looked around at his team, then back at Sean. We thought you were dead, sir. Kia, in Afghanistan. 3 years ago. I got better. Sean carefully set down the rifle, hands visible. Mind if I stand? This is getting uncomfortable. Jesus Christ. Nichols turned to his team. Stand down. Stand down. The other officers lowered their weapons, confused. Sir, we got a call. I know what you got. Sean stood slowly. My wife called it in. Made me sound like a dangerous psychotic. He gestured toward Tamara, frozen in the doorway. She's right there, by the way. Tamara Anthony. You want to arrest her? Nichols stared. Sir, arrest her, Captain. Attempted murder. Filing a false police report. Probably fraud too, but we'll get to that. Sean's voice hardened. And then I need you and your team to clear the room. What I'm about to explain is classified, and you don't have the clearance. Colonel, I don't understand. You will. Sean looked directly at Tamara. Tell them. Tell them what you did. Tamara's face crumbled. I don't. I was trying to help. You called police and told them I was armed, dangerous, and suicidal. You specifically told the chief to authorize deadly force. That's attempted murder using law enforcement as the weapon. Sean's tone was ice. You did it because you want the insurance money. You and your boyfriend, Brett Bowers. The boyfriend you've been sleeping with since 6 months after my death. The boyfriend who's currently arranging to have me killed by Ricky Huber, a known criminal. Every word was a hammer blow. Tamara collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Nichols looked from Tamara to Sean. Sir, these are serious accusations. They're facts, and I have evidence for all of it. Sean pulled a flash drive from his pocket. Audio recordings, financial records, text messages, everything you need. But first, I need you to arrest her before she destroys evidence or warns her accomplices. Nichols hesitated for only a second, then nodded sharply. Cuff her. 2 officers moved forward. Tamara didn't resist as they pulled her to her feet and secured her wrists behind her back. She was still crying, but whether from fear or guilt or anger, Sean couldn't tell. Didn't care. Everyone else, out, Sean commanded, and despite not being in the military anymore, his tone carried enough authority that the SWAT team complied. Nichols remained. Sir, what is this really about? It's about people who thought a dead man couldn't fight back. Sean handed him the flash drive. Everything you need is on there. But Nichols? This goes bigger than just my wife. There are others involved. Criminals. Fraud. People victimizing veterans. What do you need from me? Time. Don't process her until morning. Let me work tonight. By sunrise, you'll have 3 more arrests to make, and they'll all be gift-wrapped. Nichols studied him for a long moment. They'd served together, briefly, in Iraq. Nichols had been a lieutenant then, fresh and idealistic. Sean had saved his life during an ambush. That kind of debt didn't expire. You got into low 600, Nichols said finally. After that, this is by the book. Understood. Nichols left, taking Tamara with him. Sean watched through the window as they loaded her into a police car. She looked back at the house once, her face pale in the flashing lights. Then they were gone, and Sean was alone. He allowed himself 30 seconds to feel it. The betrayal, the anger, the grief for a marriage that had died 3 years ago. He just hadn't known it. 30 seconds. Then he locked it away and became the operator again. Because the night wasn't over. It had just begun. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. Brett Bowers knew something was wrong when Tamara didn't answer her phone. He'd been calling for an hour, each call going straight to voicemail. The plan was simple. She'd make the call, police would respond to a violent domestic situation, and tragically, Sean Anthony would be shot resisting arrest. Cops kill veterans all the time. No one would question it. But Tamara should have called him by now. Brett paced his apartment, his nerves fraying. He'd already paid Ricky Huber $20,000, money he'd borrowed from a loan shark named Ignacio Berry, who wasn't the forgiving type. If this didn't work, if Sean somehow survived, Brett was finished. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Brett Bowers? A calm male voice. Who is this? This is Colonel Sean Anthony. I believe you know who I am. Brett's blood turned to ice. I don't know what. I know everything, Brett. I know about you and Tamara. I know about the Veterans Relief Foundation fraud. I know you paid Ricky Huber to kill me. I know about your gambling debts, your failed businesses, your dishonorable discharge. A pause. And I have evidence for all of it. You're bluffing. Am I? The ATF raided Ricky's storage unit 3 hours ago. Found enough illegal weapons to put him away for 20 years. He's currently in custody, and I imagine he's very interested in making a deal. Wonder who will give up first. Brett's legs went weak. He sat down hard on his couch. What do you want? He whispered. I want you to meet me. Alone. Tonight. There's a construction site on Route 7, the old mill building being torn down. You know it. Yes. Be there in 30 minutes. Come alone. Don't call anyone. Don't warn Sheila or anyone else involved in your little scheme. If you do, I release everything to the FBI. Understand? Understand. Good. See you soon, Brett. The call ended. Brett sat in the darkness, his mind racing. This was a trap. Obviously. Sean was going to kill him or beat him or God knows what. The smart move was to run. Leave town. Disappear. But he couldn't. His car was leased under false pretenses. His credit cards were maxed. He had maybe $300 in actual cash. And Ignacio Berry would find him anywhere he went. He had to face Sean. Brett grabbed his gun, a 9mm he'd bought illegally from Contact, and drove to the construction site. His hands shook on the steering wheel. The old mill was a skeleton of its former self, half demolished, surrounded by chain-link fence. Brett parked outside and walked through the cut fence, his gun drawn but held low. I'm here, he called into the darkness. Silence. Then a voice from the shadows. Drop the weapon. I'm not dropping anything until I see you. You're not in a position to negotiate, Brett. Suddenly, blinding light. Portable floodlights switched on, illuminating the entire area. Brett squinted, temporarily blinded. When his eyes adjusted, he saw Sean standing 30 feet away, unarmed, hands at his sides. Just us, Sean said. No cops. No tricks. Just a conversation. About what? About how much prison time you're facing. Let's see. Conspiracy to commit murder. That's 25 to life. Insurance fraud, another 10 years. The charity embezzlement, another 5. Plus whatever other charges the IRS adds when they finish investigating. Sean stepped closer. You're looking at spending the rest of your life in a federal prison, Brett. All for $2 million you never even got. Tamara is in custody. She'll testify against you to save herself. So will Ricky Huber. So will Sheila Frazier, once she realizes how much trouble she's in. Brett raised his gun, hands shaking. Then I've got nothing to lose. You've got your life. Sean's voice was calm. You can't beat me, Brett. I've survived things that would have destroyed you. I've been shot, stabbed, blown up, and tortured by professionals. What do you think you're going to do with that 9mm? I'm going to kill you. No, you're not. Sean moved. 1 second he was standing still, The next, he'd covered the distance between them in 3 fluid strides. His hand struck Brett's wrist, and the gun went flying. A knee to the stomach doubled Brett over. Then Sean's hand was on the back of his neck, forcing him down. Brett crashed to his knees, gasping. "Here's what's going to happen," Sean said quietly. "You're going to confess to everything. The affair, the murder plot, the fraud, all of it. You're going to name everyone involved. And you're going to do it because if you don't, I'll make sure every criminal you've ever crossed knows you're cooperating with the police anyway. Ignacio Berry, for instance. I believe you owe him money. I'm sure he'd love to know where to find you. You can't. Already did. Send him a text from your phone 10 minutes ago, explaining that you're giving his name to the police to reduce your sentence. He's probably on his way here now, actually." Terror flooded Brett's face. "You're insane. I'm efficient." Sean released him, stepping back. "So you got a choice. Come with me to the police station, confess everything, and maybe you survive this. Or run, and see how long you last with both the law and the mob looking for you." Brett stayed on his knees, broken. He thought he was clever, planning the perfect crime. But he'd targeted the wrong man. Not a traumatized veteran to be manipulated, but a trained operator who'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time. "I'll confess," Brett whispered. "I'll tell them everything." Smart choice. Sean pulled out his phone and called Captain Nichols. "I've got another package for you. Route 7 construction site. Brett Bowers, ready to cooperate." 20 minutes later, police cars arrived. Brett was cuffed and loaded into a cruiser. As they drove away, Sean stood in the floodlights, watching. One more to go. Chapter 7. The Architect. Sheila Fraser knew she was in trouble when the FBI knocked on her door at 6 a.m. 2 agents, professionally dressed, holding badges and a warrant. "Ms. Fraser? FBI. We have some questions about the Veterans Relief Foundation." Sheila's careful life collapsed in that moment. She'd been the architect of the whole scheme, actually. Not Brett, not Tamara. They were just her useful pawns. Sheila had experience in nonprofit management from her previous job, before she'd been quietly fired for embezzlement they couldn't prove. She'd learned from those mistakes, created a better system, more layers, more misdirection. When Tamara's husband died, Sheila saw opportunity. A vulnerable woman with money and no direction. She'd introduced Tamara to Brett, knowing he was weak and greedy. She'd suggested the charity, helped set it up, manage the books. Then she'd watched as they'd stolen nearly $500,000 from people who'd served their country. And she'd kept 60% of it. Now, sitting in an FBI interrogation room, Sheila realized she'd made a critical error. She'd underestimated Sean Anthony. "Let's start with the Veterans Relief Foundation," said Agent Monty Rivers, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s. "You're listed as the treasurer. Can you explain these transactions?" He slid documents across the table. Bank statements, shell corporations, money trails Sheila thought she'd hidden perfectly. "I don't understand," she said, trying for confusion. "These are legitimate business expenses." "Legitimate." Agent Rivers smiled thinly. "You paid $30,000 to a company called Patriot Services LLC for event planning. Except Patriot Services doesn't exist. It's a shell corporation in Delaware with you as the sole signatory. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake, Ms. Fraser. We've been investigating you for 6 weeks." He leaned forward. "Someone sent us a very detailed tip. Complete financial records, email correspondence, even audio recordings of you discussing the fraud with Tamara Anthony and Brett Bowers." "Sean, it had to be. I want my lawyer," Sheila said. "That's your right. But let me tell you where you stand." Rivers pulled out more documents. Wire fraud, mail fraud, theft of government funds, identity theft. Yes, we know about the fake veteran profiles you created to claim donations. And conspiracy to commit murder. That last one hit like a punch. I wasn't involved in that." "Really?" "Because we have text messages between you and Tamara Anthony discussing permanent solutions to this Sean problem. We have financial records showing you withdrew $15,000 in cash the same day Brett Bowers paid Ricky Huber. You're implicated, Ms. Fraser." "Deeply." Sheila's hands shook. "What do you want from me?" "The truth." All of it. Everyone involved. Every transaction. Every lie. Rivers sat back. Do that, and maybe, you see daylight again before you're 70. Sheila looked at the evidence spread before her. Her careful plans, her perfect crime, laid bare. And she understood, finally, that she'd never been as clever as she thought. She'd just been lucky until she wasn't. There are others, she whispered. Not just us. The charity, we weren't the first. Rivers leaned forward. Explain. I learned it from my previous job. The Hamilton Foundation. They were doing the same thing. Fake charity, stealing from veterans. I just copied their model. She looked up. If you want everyone, I can give you names. Dates. Bank accounts. The whole network. Keep talking. And Sheila did. For 6 hours, she explained how veteran charity fraud had become a cottage industry. How people like her exploited the good while toward military families. How they'd stolen millions from those who'd sacrificed everything. By the end, Agent Rivers had enough evidence to launch a dozen investigations. You'll still go to prison, he told her. But you've helped us. That counts for something. Sheila nodded, numb. She cooperated hoping for leniency, but she knew the truth. She destroyed lives for money. There was no coming back from that. As they led her to a cell, she had one bitter thought. Sean Anthony won. Chapter 8. Justice and Warfare. General Tristan McNeil sat across from Sean in a quiet Hartford bar, nursing a bourbon and listening to the whole story. When Sean finished, McNeil was quiet for a long moment. "Hell to the homecoming," he finally said. "Yes, sir. You handled it well. Methodically. Completely." McNeil sipped his drink. "Though I have to ask, was this about justice or revenge?" Sean considered the question. "Both, sir. They tried to kill me. That requires response. But they were also hurting veterans through that charity fraud. That couldn't stand." "Agreed." McNeil set down his glass. "The FBI investigation you triggered is expanding. Sounds like veteran charity fraud is bigger than anyone realized. You've done real good, Sean." "Just finish what I started, sir." "No, you went beyond that." McNeil leaned forward. "Which is why I have a proposition. The Department of Defense is creating a new task force, investigating fraud, corruption, and crimes targeting military families. Not frontline work. Analytical mostly. Intelligence gathering. But important work. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you purpose. You're too good to waste on civilian life, Sean. And you're too young to retire to a rocking chair." McNeil smiled slightly. "Plus, you've just proven you're exceptionally good at taking down criminals who think they're smarter than everyone else." Sean thought about it. The house on Maple Street was empty now, tainted by betrayal. He had no ties keeping him in Connecticut, no reason to stay, and he was bored with civilian life. "What's the timeline?" he asked. "Report to Arlington in 2 weeks. We'll set you up. New assignment. Fresh start." Sean nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I accept." They shook hands. McNeil signaled for another round. "What about Tamara?" McNeil asked. "She's cooperating with prosecutors. Testified against Brett, confirmed everything. She'll probably get 10 to 15 years with parole possibility." Sean's voice was flat. "She made her choices. And you? How are you handling it?" "I'm a soldier, sir. I deal with difficult situations. This is just another mission completed." McNeil studied him. "You know it's okay to feel something about this. She was your wife. She was someone I thought I knew." Sean finished his drink. "The real Tamara, the one who'd plot my murder for insurance money? I never knew her at all." They sat in silence for a while, two warriors who understood that some wounds didn't show on the outside. Chapter 9. The Ghost Walks. 3 months later, Sean stood in a military courtroom at Fort Bragg, watching the final piece fall into place. Ricky Huber sat in orange prison scrubs, shackled, looking smaller than he had that night in the parking lot. The judge, a stern military colonel named Dwayne Yates, read the verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder of a military officer, the defendant is found guilty. On charges of illegal weapons trafficking, guilty. On charges of, it went on, 23 charges total. Ricky Huber was going to die in prison. Brett Bowers had already been sentenced, 35 years, no parole for 20. He confessed to everything, but it hadn't saved him. Tamara would face sentencing next month. Sean wouldn't attend. Sheila Frazier had gotten 15 years for her cooperation, but the investigation she'd triggered was still ongoing. 6 other fake charities had been exposed. Dozens of arrests. Millions of stolen dollars recovered and returned to legitimate veterans organizations. One good thing from all the destruction. After the sentencing, Captain Hector Nichols found Sean in the hallway. "Colonel, glad I caught you." "Captain." They shook hands. "Good work on the investigation." "I just followed the evidence you provided, sir." Nichols hesitated. "Can I ask, did you plan all of this from the start? The recordings, the surveillance, the way it all came together?" Sean smiled slightly. "A plan to survive. Everything else was just good operational practice. You played them perfectly. They played themselves. I just gave them the rope." Sean checked his watch. "I have to go. New assignment starts tomorrow." "Where are they sending you?" "Can't say. Classified." He paused. "But it's good work. Important work. Helping people who deserve better. That's all that matters, sir." They saluted each other. Then Sean walked out into the North Carolina sunshine. His truck was packed with the few possessions he cared about. Everything else from the house had been sold or donated. New beginning. Clean slate. His phone buzzed. Text from General McNeil. "Ready for tomorrow? This assignment's going to challenge you." Sean typed back, "I'm ready, sir." He climbed into his truck and started the engine. In his rearview mirror, the courthouse disappeared, the past fading away. Tamara had tried to bury him. Instead, she'd freed him from a life that was already dead. Now he had purpose again. Mission parameters. Enemies to defeat. Some people thought being a ghost meant being powerless. They didn't understand that ghosts could move unseen, strike without warning, haunt those who deserved it. Sean Anthony had been declared dead once. He'd come back, and now he was going hunting again. But this time, he'd be targeting people who preyed on those who'd served. Criminals who thought veterans were easy marks. People like Tamara and Brett and Sheila, but on a larger scale. They wouldn't see him coming. Ghosts never announce themselves. They just appear when you least expect it, and by the time you realize you're being haunted, it's already too late. Sean smiled as he drove toward his new life, leaving the old one burning in his wake. The dead man was walking again, and he was bringing justice with him. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.